Joining BRI was an atrocious decision and a big mistake. These words mark Italy's decision to exit China's Global Belt and Road Initiative in 2024. And by the looks of it, Italy will not be the only one. After Sri Lanka's default in 2022, the participating countries in BRI are searching for a smooth exit. With such fears of debt on the rise, China is struggling to fulfill its foreign policy goals. What does Italy's exit from BRI mean for China? Will it be able to convince other countries to jump on board? Let's find out. Understanding China's Belt and Road Initiative. The Belt and Road Initiative is Beijing's ambitious flagship foreign policy program. In simple terms, this plan aims to connect China with the rest of the world. It involves constructing maritime and overland transportation links across Asia, the Middle East, Africa, and Europe. But the BRI is not just about building infrastructure. It is a thorough effort by China to achieve a few key objectives. Firstly, it seeks to develop a broader and interconnected market for China. This will enhance China's political and economic influence on a global scale. Secondly, the BRI is designed to create favorable conditions for China to develop a high-technology economy. Supporters of this initiative argue that it promotes economic development and connectivity, but critics don't think so. They think it is a means for China to advance its military interests and gain political leverage. So how does the BRI work? In this trillion-dollar initiative, Chinese state-owned companies offer participating countries favorable terms for loans and credit. These agreements are mostly negotiated directly between governments. These agreements often include below-market interest rates. This has caused many nations to become increasingly cautious. The risk of potential debt burden is high under these negotiations. Before we go deeper into debt risks, what is China's motivation for the BRI? Beijing's motivations. The first big motivation for the BRI is China's rivalry with the United States. Most of China's international trade flows through the Malacca Strait in Singapore. Singapore is a major U.S. ally, so you can see where the tension is coming from. China wants to secure its trade routes, and the BRI is its grand plan for doing just that. Do you remember how the U.S. used the Marshall Plan after World War II to rebuild Europe? China is doing the same thing. The only difference is that China is doing it based on shared economic interests. It is not shy to reveal its ambition to make the participating countries economically and politically dependent on it. The second reason is that the BRI is a lifeline for China's state-owned companies. In the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis, China responded with a massive 4 trillion yuan stimulus package. They built railways, bridges, and airports like there was no tomorrow. This saturated their own market in the process. With the BRI, they can expand beyond their borders and find new markets. But right now, China is stuck under the accusations of debt trap diplomacy, causing participating countries to exit the BRI. BRI and the debt trap. Under the BRI, China is being accused of financing big infrastructure projects in developing countries with loans that are, well, not sustainable. Once these countries can't keep up with their debt payments, China comes in to gain serious leverage over their governments. But how did this story start? This whole drama gained momentum when Sri Lanka defaulted in 2022. One of the main reasons for the default was linked to China. The Hambantota port development. The Sri Lankan government found itself in hot water because it couldn't keep up with the Chinese loans that had funded the project. So what happened? In 2017, Sri Lanka handed the port over to China on a 99-year lease. A few years later, Sri Lanka defaulted on its debt obligations. It was the first island country in the Indian Ocean to default on its foreign debt non-repayment. After this incident, many countries are worried that if they stay a part of the BRI, they will meet the same fate. But the thing with the Belt and Road Initiative is that it's not a neat and unified strategy. It's a patchwork quilt of different agreements. Each agreement has its own terms. There are 15 different Chinese government ministries right now who want a part in this program. Chinese provinces have their own agendas, businesses, and projects. The diplomats sign projects based on loyalty points rather than viability. Even the Chinese central government does not know which projects are a part of the BRI and which are not. Now, it does not help the situation that there's a lot of lack of transparency. Beijing does not give details of the loans that fuel the BRI. This lack of information increases the confusion and mistrust. In the US, the BRI is looked at as a threat to Western interests, but that's not all. Other democratic nations have also been slow and disjointed in their response to this program. It wasn't until the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic at the 2021 G7 summit that these nations finally cooked up a unified plan called the Build Back Better World. However, the delays in the projects have not helped China's case a lot. Project delays, debt, trap, fear on the rise. Ever since April 2018, multiple BRI projects have hit roadblocks. There have been delays, suspensions, and even some outright cancellations. In 2019, the Economist Intelligence Unit put out a report pointing out that the troubles are happening because of skepticism and pushback against these projects. The same year, Islamabad asked Beijing to hit the brakes on a $2 billion coal power project they were supposed to do together. Pakistan's Railways Minister, Sheikh Rashid Ahmad, also stated that they're cutting down Chinese loans for rail projects from $8.2 billion to $6.2 billion. Then there's Myanmar. Their government decided to cut down the price of a Chinese-backed deepwater port in Rakhine State from $7.3 billion to $1.3 billion. Why? Well, there were serious concerns that the initial cost would bury the Southeast Asian nation in mountains of debt. The concerns don't end here. Sierra Leone, one of Africa's poorest countries, waved goodbye to plans for a $318 million airport project with a Chinese company in 2018. And over in Malaysia, Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad hit the pause button on $22 billion worth of Chinese-backed projects. Bangladesh took it one step further. They canceled the expansion of a major highway that was supposed to be built by China Harbor Engineering Company. What was the reason? Well, rumor has it that the Chinese firm tried to offer a bribe to a government official. At last, we have Tanzania. They decided to sit back down at the negotiation table with Beijing on an $11 billion port project. Sri Lanka's shocking move in 2017 sent shockwaves throughout the developing world, and it became an example of what could happen if countries couldn't meet their financial obligations to China. With all this in mind, Italy is looking towards exiting the BRI altogether, and it's not looking good for China. A big mistake. In 2019, Italy made headlines by becoming the first G7 country to join China's Belt and Road Initiative. Now, Italy is second-guessing its decision. The country is giving strong hints that it's thinking about breaking up with the BRI. If this happens, it will happen when its 5-year Memorandum of Understanding is up for renewal in March 2024. Italy went into this agreement with high hopes. They signed all sorts of agreements with China under the BRI umbrella. It covered everything from taxes to pork exports, cultural heritage, and some smaller business deals. But these agreements didn't give Italy the economic boost they were dreaming of. In fact, Italy's exports to China only went up from 14.5 billion euros to 18.5 billion since they joined the BRI. On the flip side, Chinese exports to Italy soared. They went from 33.5 billion euros to 50.9 billion. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has been vocal about this concern. She has called their decision to join the BRI a big mistake. And it's not just her. Italian Defense Minister Guido Crosetto didn't mince words either. He labeled Italy's BRI entry as an improvised and atrocious act. Italy's graceful exit from the BRI can be a game changer. It'll provide a blueprint for other countries who are looking to do the same. Keep in mind that this is all happening at a time when the world's economic landscape is shifting. Italy is feeling the pressure to reassess its relationship with China. They're about to take charge as the rotating president of the Group of 7 developed economies in 2024. So the stakes are high. Now, Washington is set to gain a lot from this move as well. They're thinking that if Italy goes through with this exit and does it without any reparations, it will open the door for other Western European countries to follow suit. Even some Eastern European countries might start thinking about making their own moves. Giulio Pugliese from Oxford University School of Global and Area Studies has commented on this scenario as well. She stated that many Baltic states and Central and Eastern European countries are having second thoughts about China's true motivations. Italy's Prime Minister Meloni is not rushing into this decision. She mentioned this at a press conference during the G20 Leaders Summit in Delhi. And while all this is happening, there's a meeting of minds going on. Meloni met with China Premier Li Qiang during the G20 summit. It does look like that both countries are trying to keep things sorted. But there is an interesting twist. In 2023, U.S. President Joe Biden and India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced their own plan to build a network of railways and sea routes. They are planning to connect India, the European Union, and Middle Eastern countries like Israel, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. The future of the Belt and Road Initiative. What will Italy's exit mean for China's BRI? We are not sure yet, but it's hard to ignore the reality. China is going to face a lot of trouble in achieving its grand plans. Countries that jumped on board are now facing the reality of big debts. Chinese banks are getting nervous about risky loans. And let's not forget the internal economic challenges China is dealing with after COVID-19. Now, add that to the fact that European countries are all about de-risking their economies. They're not too keen on becoming more economically dependent on China. So, the chances of any major economy joining the BRI in the near future, well, let's just say they're looking pretty slim. But the chances of countries exiting BRI are looking high. Do you think China can convince Italy to stay? Will Middle Eastern and Asian countries exit the BRI? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and check out our next video for more updates.